Hello and welcome. Today, we're jumping right into one of the most wild, incredible, and, let's be honest, kind of overwhelming times in a pregnancy, the first trimester. It is an absolute whirlwind of change, both for your body and your emotions, as you go from just seeing a positive test to the very first real signs of a new life. And there's really one moment that makes it all hit home. Before you've bought a single thing, before the morning sickness really kicks in, there's this sound, this tiny flickering image on a screen that just changes absolutely everything.
So here's how we're going to break it all down. First, we'll talk about that tiny moving heartbeat. Then we'll see how a baby goes from the size of a blueberry to an actual human form. We'll get real about surviving morning sickness, I promise. Then we'll go through a super practical checklist and finally help you figure out how to navigate the whole healthcare system. Let's do this.
All right, so let's start with that first absolutely crucial ultrasound. This is the one that usually happens somewhere between week 5 and week 7. It's that big appointment where you're just hoping and praying to see that everything is on track and developing right where it should be. The development that happens in these first few weeks is it's lightning fast. Around week 5, you might only see the gestational sac. But then, just a week later, boom, you can often see that incredible flickering heartbeat. And it doesn't stop. By week 8, tiny little buds that will become arms and legs are already there. It's all leading up to this first major milestone at week 13, the big NT scan. So when you first hear that heartbeat or see it on the screen, you might notice something that feels a little off. It is so fast. Seriously, we're talking up to 180 beats per minute. That's more than double what your own resting heart rate probably is. And yeah, that super high number might seem pretty alarming at first glance, right? But it's actually a fantastic sign. It's called fetal tachycardia, and it's completely normal and expected while that brand new cardiac system is getting up and running. Don't worry, that rate will naturally slow down to a more stable pace as things progress.
But that, of course, brings up a really common and totally understandable fear. What happens if you go in for that 6-week scan and you don't see a heartbeat right away?
Okay, first things first, do not panic. Seriously, how pregnancies are dated starts from your last period. But if your cycles are irregular or if you just happen to ovulate a little late that month, the timing can easily be off by a week or even more. It is so common for doctors just say, hey, let's have you come back in a week and we'll check again. So how in the world does that tiny flickering little dot transform into something that actually looks like a tiny human? Well, the speed of growth in these first few weeks it's just mind-blowing. Just to give you some perspective, right around 7 weeks, when all this incredibly complex development is already happening, the entire embryo is only about the size of a single blueberry. It's just wild to think about how much is going on at such a tiny, tiny scale. So if you put it all together, the transformation is just, wow. In just 8 short weeks, you go from seeing a little black sac on a screen to a profile that is recognizably human, with little arms and legs and all. It really does happen in the blink of an eye. Of course, with all this amazing biological stuff happening, there's often let's call it a notoriously difficult side effect: morning sickness. And can we just agree the name is terrible marketing? Because for so many people, it is all day and all night sickness. A lot of parents describe this as a really strange, contradictory feeling. Because on one hand, you feel physically awful, just completely miserable. But on the other hand, there's this weird little voice in your head that says the nausea is a sign that the pregnancy is strong, that the hormones are raging. And that can bring this very strange sense of comfort. And the symptoms can be just relentless. It's so much more than just feeling queasy. It's a kind of fatigue that just sinks into your bones. It's suddenly hating foods you used to love. It's aches and pains you didn't expect. Honestly, for a lot of people, just being able to lie completely flat is the only way to get a single moment of peace. So, the million-dollar question: what can you actually do about it? How do you get through it? Well, there's no magic cure, unfortunately. But the key is usually finding those small, simple things that can give you just a little bit of relief and help you keep something down. Think of this as your classic first trimester survival kit. Bland stuff like soda crackers can be an absolute lifesaver. Sometimes tart flavors, like from plums or a slice of lemon in your water, can cut through that nausea.
And fizzy drinks like soda water or even a little sip of cola can sometimes settle your stomach and give you that tiny sugar boost you desperately need. Okay, let's switch gears to the practical stuff. Your medical to-do list. This is where you go from that, oh my gosh, I'm pregnant moment to actually getting everything set up with your healthcare team.
Now, I know this looks like a lot, but it's really just a step-by-step path. Here's my biggest piece of advice. The second you see that heartbeat, book your 13-week NT scan, like right away. Those appointments can fill up weeks, even months in advance. After that, you'll get your blood work done and officially establish your medical file, a process sometimes called jiandong, at whatever hospital you've chosen.
And that early blood work is so important. It's not just a formality. It screens for infectious diseases like hepatitis B or syphilis, checks for common genetic conditions like thalassemia, and it also gives your doctors a baseline for your health, looking at things like your blood sugar and how your liver's doing.
Okay, finally, let's talk about one of the biggest decisions you're going to make. Where are you going to get all this care? In a lot of places, you've got a choice between free community clinics and paid hospitals. And believe me, they can offer very different experiences.
And this really highlights the trade-off, right? For something like the NT scan, which is a really important early screening, a free clinic might just do a very quick, basic check. But a paid scan at a hospital, that's often a full 30-minute comprehensive look at the baby's entire early anatomy. For a lot of parents, that extra peace of mind is absolutely worth the cost.
So a really smart strategy can be to kind of mix and match. You can totally use the free community services for standard stuff, like your basic blood work. The results are going to be the same no matter where you go. But for those really big diagnostic milestones, like the NT scan now and the big anomaly scan later, investing in those detailed, comprehensive checks at a hospital is something we highly recommend.
And that, my friends, brings us to the end of the first leg of this journey. The first trimester is truly a whirlwind. It's this crazy mix of emotion, unbelievable growth, and a whole lot of preparation, taking you from just an idea to a real living presence.
And as those early anxieties start to fade a little bit, the whole focus begins to shift. The question isn't so much, is everything okay anymore? It starts to become, how do we get ready for what's next? And that's the thought we're going to leave you with. Thanks so much for joining us for this explainer.